Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kelsey Larson. I am the marketing director here at Razor. Today, I am so excited to be hosting our Leveling Up Member Engagement, How FIs Can Use Gamification webinar. Warren has so much for you to unpack today, but first, we're going to just kind of set a few ground rules before we get started. As you may notice, we are recording this, and just a reminder, you will receive the link after today's webinar to watch as you will or share accordingly. And then also we do have the chat functionality available for you guys to use. So at any point in time, please feel free to add questions. We will answer some at the end if there is time. Otherwise, we will get back to you one-on-one with any follow-up questions you may have. Lastly, we will be conducting a few polls throughout. So as we kind of get started, they will pop up on your screen, and feel free to just use your mouse to click the answer and hit submit so that we can tally kind of all the results. As this is a gamification webinar, we want to make sure that we are getting you involved. So as I said, this webinar is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be learning all about gamification and what that means and the different aspects of it. And with that, we are going to have a quiz at the end of our webinar today for a chance to win a free gift from Razor. So be sure to stay tuned until the end. And with that, I would like to welcome our presenter for the day, Warren Weems. Warren leads Razor strategy practice, bringing over 16 years of experience in the loyalty marketing industry. He has extensive expertise in loyalty strategy and consulting and has developed and refined programs for some of the world's most recognized brands. He is someone I get to have the pleasure of working alongside every day. So please help me in welcoming Warren.
Thanks, Kelsey. You're so kind.
All righty, everyone. As we kind of jump in, we are going to start out with our first poll. So take a moment and this will pop up on your screen. Give it 1 minute here. We have some rolling in. So the question is, if your institution could gamify just one aspect of banking, what would it be? Right now, it looks like credit score improvement is winning. Give it 1 minute. All right, it looks like everything actually came in with a tie. So Warren, I will leave that up to you to kind of teach us all.
All right, fantastic. Well, let me dive in. First of all, welcome. Pleasure to spend a little bit of time with all of you. I want to just make sure everyone knows. So we're pretty casual when we do these. So if you've got questions along the way, holler. We'll certainly stop at the end to make sure that we do Q&A. And you can also put questions in the chat. So we'll keep an eye out and try and keep us on track. But would love to hear from you if you've got anything that you're thinking about. So I want to start with a definition just to ground us all, because the term gamification is used everywhere, and it's honestly, it's probably a little overused. So for the purposes of our time together, I just want to set the stage for how we view it and kind of what we see this definition of. So it's really just embedding game type elements into a non-game context. So that might be a rewards program. It might be some other experience. So bringing gamification in, it is not actually creating a game, although sometimes that can be a part of it. But it's just these pieces of game type experience that come into where we go. And for us, as we think about where we can bring this in, it can help kind of transform some of these routine or complex tasks that our members are working with and try and make them a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interactive, and just bring some new fun to the experience. And this can drive deeper engagement, it can drive deeper satisfaction, and it can drive behavior to areas that we may want to focus our members on a little bit more. So it's really important when we think about gamification. The first thing to consider is alignment. So we don't put gamification elements in just because they're fun. We want to align them with what our goals are. And just some examples of what we might be driving people towards when we think about goals and aligning gamification. So we could be looking at trying to drive member engagement, trying to drive retention. Maybe we want to diversify product usage. Driving financial literacy is a great one, getting especially our younger audiences up to speed on how they manage their finances and what some of the terminology is. There's a great way to use gamification for onboarding. Certainly, we want to acquire a younger audience. I think that's on everyone's mind right now. Trying to drive our digital tools. And then for the ability to collect some of this behavioral data can really help us target and think about our members in a different way. And if we do this well, we can drive a competitive advantage for ourselves. So where and why this matters, and we're just going to walk through some ways that gamification can be used across some of these. So from a member engagement perspective, we might throw some challenges in. We might put some streaks where we can reward people for interaction across digital channels or e-statements or maybe in mobile banking. So lots of different ways that we can interact there. From a financial literacy perspective, we can reward uh, financial literacy mechanics. So we could teach them budgeting. We could help them with credit scores, as we saw in the polls. So there's lots of ways that we can drive them towards content, whether that's interactive or offline reading, where they can be part of that and we can gamify that experience as well. We can use this to drive some trust and transparency. So encourage honest behavior change with our members and show them that we're not manipulating. We're putting a gamification process in place to help them achieve their goal. And I'm going to talk about goals again in a couple of slides here because those are really important. Community inclusion, certainly there's a lot of ways where we can really feature the community. That could be, local leaderboards. It could be reaching out to other community partners. So we can have a lot of fun incorporating these elements into what we do. And then, of course, there is an appeal here to a younger audience. Gamification is something that they like, they seek in some of their experiences, and we can bring those in without getting into like the riskier things like crypto or whatever it might be, and just provide a fun experience that really drives some of that engagement. All right, so we're going to go through some use cases and examples here of where we see this working and how we could use gamification to drive some behavior. So I'm going to start with savings and deposit challenges. So this is where we could put something in like progress bars. And I'm going to walk through the definitions of some of these elements. So bear with me if you're not 100% sure what they are yet. For onboarding, we could have step-by-step missions. We could have guided tours. We could offer badges for completing tasks along the onboarding journey. There's the ability to track behavior and give little nudges. And these are useful by incorporating things like progress indicators or micro challenges. From a product discovery and cross-sell perspective, we can put quests or game pathways in that guide a user through the new product journey. And we can offer rewards and badges as they make progress through that as well. I really like the financial education and literacy piece. There's a lot we can do to drive behavior into quizzes or interactive challenges or learn and earn type modules to really up that literacy among the audience. Of course, social and competitive elements. Leaderboards are often a big part of gamification. Not always, but they are popular and they do drive a specific type of behavior. People like to see how their peers are doing. They like to see challenges among friends. Rewards and cash back, we get this, but it can be more than, a tangible cash back like points or cash. It can be badges, it can be leaderboards, it can be a chance to win. So there's a lot of different ways we can think about that category as well. And then behavioral nudges, which I mentioned before. So the ability to maybe give a countdown timer or set some urgency so that someone can go take an action that we feel is the right action for them to take at the moment based on other things that we're seeing. All right, Kelsey, I'm going to bump to you for a poll.
Yes. All right. Poll number 2. I am just publishing your guys' way. And the question is, which incentive do you think drives the most engagement in finance apps? We got loyalty points, cashback rewards, badges and achievements, and exclusive access or experiences. Let us know your thoughts. All right. It looks like cashback rewards is taking number 1.
No surprise there, right? All right. Am I good to proceed, Kelsey?
Yep, you're good. We are
Excellent.
number
All right.
1.
Thank you for everyone for participating in that one. Always nice to see the feedback. Um, I want to give you some examples of things that we've seen out there that are kind of interesting. Now, I should note before we get into these, not all of these are gamification examples that we're suggesting you go out and do. As a matter of fact, some of these can be pretty complex, but we wanted to show a range. So I'm going to walk through some of the basic elements in a moment. But there's a couple of really interesting examples here that I think are kind of fun and show how far you can take some of the engagement. So we have a truest long game here, win the savings game. So the fun one here was participants could earn coins for positive financial actions. And they could use those to play games for chances to win. And they had some really compelling prizes. And these are tactics that really have been proven to drive specific member behavior. So, and especially when you get some of the prizes that are larger, people really tend to gravitate towards these types of experiences. Again, not suggesting everyone needs to get into a grand gamification element like this, but it just shows you what's potential out there and what can really drive some engagement with members. Billinero had a program where members could earn coins. And very similarly, it was a way for them to earn basically a currency that allowed them to try for a chance to win something. And they had some big numbers here that really drove some member behavior. So it not only creates this fun gamification element, but they had a really strong incentive on the win side where they could make sure that people were engaging in a deep and meaningful way. So kind of a really fun mechanic to think about. This one I thought was really interesting. So Coastal World by Coastal Community Bank, they kind of took this one a bit of a step further, and they actually did create a game where you could wander around a 3D environment. And as you talk to characters, you actually learned about their products and services. Now, this is probably kind of the most extreme example of a gamification component, but it's really fun. And they did get a lot of traffic to this particular tool. So it's a really interesting way to think about it when we look at trying to drive engagement and behavior and bring our members further into the fold. But I think we should get back and simplify a little bit. And let's just talk through some of the mechanics that are out there and available. Because usually when we're thinking about gamification, we're going to start a little slower. We're not going to go with a grand gamification element. We're going to use something that's a little bit smaller. So the way we think about this, at least for us, is we kind of break gamification mechanics down into 6 categories. And I'm going to walk through each one of these, but we have progression mechanics where there's advancement. These are really important because people respond well to goals. When they have a goal, especially if they have progress towards it, that can really change how they react. We have reward mechanics, which most of us are familiar with. We have challenge and mastery mechanics. This is particularly interesting when we think about financial literacy. How can we develop a skill and drive some problem solving? Time and scarcity mechanics, we're all probably familiar with these, right? Urgency and scarcity to drive action. We look at social and community. So how do we figure out how to leverage our peers and leverage this notion of a group dynamic? And then how do we personalize and customize some of these mechanics to make our members feel like they're more part of this process that we're going through? So let's get into these a little bit deeper. So from a progression standpoint, again, I want to talk about the goals here because I did mention that earlier. So goals are proven in research, not just because we looked at them, but goals are proven to really drive engagement. When someone has a goal, that's something that's on their mind. But more importantly, when they start to see progress towards a goal, they're far more likely to finish and carry through with that. So goals are a really interesting mechanic to put into a program from a gamification perspective. It also gives them a sense of where they are. So if they're trying to achieve an award, a progress bar can definitely help them understand that. Checklists and missions, we've seen checklists in a lot of experiences. They're an easy way to just show a member what they've done and what they still need to get to. Uh, Leveling up, where most of us are probably familiar with tiers, whether it's a travel program or a retail program, just showing a way to level up status because of actions they have taken. So, and when I talk about tiers in this respect, I'm not talking about, someone who has earned it through tenure or spend. This could be for taking specific actions or behaviors they've done. So then there's a lot of different ways to think about this. And then unlocking milestones. So kind of taking the checklist notion and just moving that up. So typically we would bundle things together in one milestone. And as they unlock it, they get access to something further down the road. And you can assign rewards or some sort of benefits to these as well to make sure that people continue to engage with them. Okay, now let's talk about reward mechanics. And we all kind of know the points world, right? But there's a lot of different ways to think about this with gamification. And I'm going to hit on the pitfalls before we get to the end of this slide. But we can do points or we could do coins. And the reason I say coins is sometimes it's interesting to introduce a new description for something or a new currency that's not actually tied back to cash value. And people can really be encouraged to earn those things and try and drive their collection. Badges and achievements, people do respond to these. However, and this is where I'll kind of come in with a caveat. Badges especially, but basically everything you see here really should be tied to a goal that's relevant to a member. We've seen programs where people offer hundreds of badges for doing absolutely anything related to the business. But the reality is a badge should be something that's relevant to a person on their way to a specific type of goal. So maybe it's about improving their credit score and they take steps along the way and they earn badges for doing that. That's what's going to make people feel relevant about earning a badge rather than just getting a badge every time they look up. Streaks are kind of interesting where we can show that you're taking an action over and over again and you're sticking with it. So in this example, we see a day 9 and a day 10 streak. So just something that keeps people coming back on a really regular basis. Spin to win. These are really fun. They're quite engaging. I should note that anytime we have a win mechanic, you do need to think of these a little bit differently. They require some regulatory things on the back end. So just be aware every time you give away something where there's a chance element, there's some extra components to think about, but these can be really valuable in driving member engagement. We have social rewards, right? So who's at the top, and people actually respond to these. It may seem really simple, who's in first place, who's in second, but as we see with leaderboards and other reward mechanics like this, this is something that people do gravitate towards. And then progressive rewards, we can continue to offer things as people check those things off their list and reward them along their journey. All right, now let's talk about challenge and mastery. So again, I talked earlier about this one being a good one for financial literacy. I think that's a really good spot for it, because we can put quizzes and trivia in here that's directed at really teaching people more about the financial world, more about the things that they need to learn. Maybe we're teaching them about improving credit scores, but by putting them in a quiz or a trivia format, we can drive deeper engagement so that they're learning more and being rewarded along the way. We can do the same with little games, as you saw from some of the early examples. But they don't have to be big, complex ones. They can be really simple ones where people are going through a game that actually teaches them about something and drives some of that new skill. Uh, we have exams that you can run through. So kind of the standard way to think about education and running through a set of materials that you use to learn. And then also challenges where we're unlocking additional things and providing new content. So this is a fun one because it's a great way to introduce content and information and knowledge to people while still engaging them with something that's a little bit fun. Time and scarcity. We've all seen the email that says last chance, jump in. And these work, there's psychology behind time and scarcity elements. So when we think about bringing these into a gamification type environment, we have countdown timers where we can talk about the ability to set a countdown and run towards it. We have time limited missions where we may require you to do something within 2 days or 5 days or 7 days. We have the ability to install daily or weekly check-ins, some way for them to just make sure they're coming back and continuing to engage with us on a regular basis. I've seen these actually prove really popular, even with a points program where it's just a handful of points, but people come back day after day to engage just to earn those points and keep up. And then some limited edition type things. Can we show something that's really unique that maybe they just didn't get something somewhere else? And that can really drive interesting behavior as well. I want to talk about social and community mechanics now. So there are studies here as well where people will strive to do things or perform things when they know they're up against a peer, right? We're all part of these contests. Some of us want to win more than others, but there is definitely behavior out there that shows people want to be involved in this. So leaderboards, probably the most common gamification element in this space, just seeing where you stack against everyone else. And it's interesting to watch members try to push their way up a leaderboard by maybe taking an additional quiz or performing an additional action. Co-op challenges we don't see as much, but this one's really interesting when they come together, because this is a way to bring a group together to meet a team goal. Often I'm seeing these done with charitable donations, but there's a lot of different ways to think about a co-op challenge where multiple people come together and try to meet a goal at the same time by working together. Peer comparisons, how do you compare against your group of some sort? Did you save more? Did you do more? Did you perform more? And these can be interesting for people to see as well. Mentorship unlocks. So just showing that you're able to mentor someone in your community and bring them information that we can reward them for and make sure that they're recognized. And then shareable achievements. So this is important to a lot of people to be able to share that they've done something, right? Show that you've done something, you're being recognized, and share that with your peers in your community. And then finally, we get into personalization and customization. So, and this isn't so much about, a gamification mechanic. This is about how we bring gamification to life with some additional elements that make it more engaging. So avatars and profiles can be kind of fun because people can choose them. They can customize them. The game you saw earlier, the coastal one, you can change your avatar and what you look like and kind of how it acts. So they can be kind of fun and drive some behaviors. The ability to set your own goals. I really like this one, especially as we think about, financial literacy. Maybe you want to set a goal to hit a new credit score, and we can allow you to set individual components working towards that goal that you can check. This makes gamification far more engaging. I mentioned goals earlier, and the more relevant a goal is to a specific person, the more likely it is that they're going to continue to work towards that goal. We can make things more adaptive depending on the person that we're working with. So maybe we're working on financial literacy again, and we're providing some skills modules, but we recognize someone already has a specific skill or someone's already at a specific level. So we can move them into more techniques that are a little bit more advanced. And then behavior-based feedback. We can tell them how they're doing. We can give them some offer some guidance and kind of nudge them in a direction if we're seeing things where it makes sense to, just offer them a little bit of feedback and help them along. All right. And we have another poll. I'll hand it over to you, Kelsey.
Awesome. Poll number 3, our final poll for the day here, just publishing for all of you up on your screen. The question we have is, which part of the customer journey do you think has the greatest opportunity for gamification? Onboarding account setup, savings and budget, financial education, or loan or investment milestones? All right, financial education is coming to the top with onboarding and account setup as a second. So back to you, Warren.
All right. Well, I just want to kind of get to the end here with some best practices. And there's lots, but these are some of the key ones that we think about. So focus on intrinsic motivation. And again, this is really about the member's goal. What's important to a member to drive them to do something? It's not about so much our behaviors that we want them to do, although those are important and we can reward those. But from a gamification perspective, people are much more likely to engage if that motivation is related to them, something that's important to them and they're driving towards. We want to align any of these gamification elements with your goals. What do you seek to do? Where do you seek to drive member behavior or engagement? Maybe it's education. I think that, from the poll, that's definitely important. But maybe it's integration in the community or some other things, but it should align with what you're trying to achieve. And then segmentation can be important here because different segments interact with gamification mechanics in different ways. We talked about younger audiences, and they're probably going to participate in a different way than some of the older audiences are. And you're also going to see difference in the types of people that you have. So we talk about borrowers and savers, but there's lots of different ways to segment. And then we can target mechanics to those people to really help drive more engagement based on who they are. And I'm just going to kind of surround this all with, it all should be related to personal goals. If people see gamification mechanics that are aligned with my goals, I'm much more likely to engage. So those are some of the best practices that we see and to be aware of. And Kelsey, I'm going to hand it back to you for our gamification quiz.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you, Warren. We appreciate you all joining in on today's webinar. And what we have for you here is just a little quiz. So feel free to scan the QR code, and our top participants will receive a link from Razor to be able to get a free gift. But you do have to complete the quiz, and you do have to be a top performer. We are going to test your skills to see if you were paying attention. So give it a scan, and we will be in touch if you are a winner.